Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is exacerbate. This verb was suggested by the viewer Abdi. Abdi, thank you so much for this suggestion. Before we talk about the meaning of this verb, let's spend a moment talking about its pronunciation. Over the years, I've had a number of students say that this is a tricky word to pronounce. Many suggest it's because of the letter X near the beginning of the word. So here, the letter X is going to make a G and a Z sound together. And then the letter C is going to make an S sound. I think those are the two parts that can make this a little more challenging. So we're going to pronounce this word exacerbate. Exacerbate. I hope you are pronouncing along with me as you watch. But now let's discuss how we can use this verb. The verb exacerbate really just has one meaning, and that is to take a problem or maybe a bad situation or a negative feeling and make it worse. So this is not really a fun verb or a fun feeling to have, but it can be a really powerful way to communicate that someone is taking a bad situation and making it even more challenging or more difficult, more unpleasant. For now, you should know that exacerbate is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, you're going to drop the E on the end because we have a verb that ends in the pattern of vowel consonant E. Then we'll add the ing. That forms exacerbating. The past tense and the participle form of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Now, our base verb, exacerbate, ends in a T sound. This means when we add the ed ending, we are going to add an extra syllable to the verb. So our ed ending here is going to make an id sound. Id, that's what's going to give it that extra syllable. So the past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this. Exacerbated. Exacerbated. Okay. Now, you might be relieved to know no additional phrasal verbs, so we're going to keep looking at this one main definition or one main way to use our verb. And today we'll review the simple present and the present progressive as we talk about and look at some examples of the verb exacerbate. Let's start with the simple present. We can use this verb tense to talk about habits and routines, but with this particular verb, I think you're likely to see people use it to express the idea that something is a fact, a true statement. So, the thing that many people struggle to remember about the simple present is that we have to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, then we just use the base verb. So we do not add anything special to the end of the verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then we need to add an S to the end of the verb. Let's take a look at our first example sentence. This immigration policy exacerbates healthcare workforce shortages. So here, policy is singular, so that's why you see the S on the end of the verb here. And this is a statement you might hear a politician or some other maybe government leader of some kind stating, and they might be choosing the simple present here to, again, sound maybe a bit more forceful, right? This is a factual statement is what they're trying to convey. Now let's talk about making sentences in the negative in the simple present. To do this, again, we have to pay attention to our subject. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, we'll use do not and then the base verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, we'll use does not and then the base verb. Notice I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb here in the negative. Doesn't matter what the subject is. No S on the end of the verb here. Let's take a look at another example. This way of presenting content doesn't exacerbate the harms of social media. So again, I think this was borrowed from maybe some kind of influencer or tech professional trying to suggest they had this new idea or new way of getting people to interact on social media without causing like further harm in a multitude of ways. Right? Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, we'll start with do or does. Then it'll be followed by our subject. We want our subject to match that form of the helping verb. Then we'll use the base verb. Here's another example. Does mild stress exacerbate atrial fibrillation? Now, you're likely to encounter this verb exacerbate in connection to health and medical topics. And so it could be something like one condition making a second condition worse. That's what that question is. And I think there was a research study that was specifically looking at that kind of situation. The atrial fibrillation is a type of heart condition. We see lots of examples of this verb talking about asthma, COPD, other kinds of lung diseases, illnesses, etc. Now let's move on and look at some sentences in the present progressive. Many teachers and textbooks will call this the present continuous, and that's just fine. It means exactly the same thing. In the present progressive, we're either talking about an action that is happening right now, or we're discussing an action that has started in a time period that's not yet complete. So the action is in progress. The reason I like saying present progressive with my students is the 2 P's can help you remember you need 2 parts to make your verb. In the present progressive, we'll be using a present form of be and then the ing form of the verb. So this is a verb tense where we must pay attention to our subject, and that's because we've got 3 forms of be in the present. So if the subject is I, you want to use am, and then that ing form the verb. If the subject is you, we, or they, use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. Finally, if your subject is he, she, or it, use is, and then that ing form the verb. Here's another example. America's childcare crisis is exacerbating gender gaps. So here, for many people, it's very difficult to find childcare if you're a working parent. It also tends to be very expensive. And so that's the crisis that's occurring. And I believe this was a researcher or maybe a leader suggesting that this particular problem is further impacting or worsening gender gaps. So in the past, it's been very typical for women to be more likely to stay at home, and that happens quite a lot when couples look at, goodness, how much are we going to be spending on childcare versus how much someone's going to be earning. And some people just find it doesn't make financial sense. Now let's talk about making a negative present progressive sentence. To do this, again, pay attention to your subject because you want to use the form of be that matches, followed by not, and then that ing form the verb. Here's another example. We aren't exacerbating the problem, we're improving conditions. Okay? Here, again, someone might be focused on what's happening right now, maybe defending their actions after somebody has accused them of making something worse. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, you want to start with the form of be, whatever form matches your subject, that subject comes next, then the ing form of the verb. Here's another example. Is extreme heat exacerbating air pollution? That's a question a lot of people in the United States were asking last week because There were certain areas and regions that were extremely hot, maybe setting record types of highs. And we have various forms of air pollution, from wildfires in the US and in Canada. And with that heat, the question is that heat making things worse? And I believe most scientists and researchers were saying, yes, it worsens the problem. Now, let's spend a moment looking at a word that's related to our verb. And it's the noun form of our verb. It's exacerbation. And really, what this noun means is either the process of making a problem, a bad situation, or some negative feeling worse. That's one way to use it. So, an example of this might be, do leaders care that their decision led to the exacerbation of existing problems? Saw a comment like very similar to this in a public forum, talking about how sort of, I think it was a city council's particular decisions had made something in the city much worse from residents' points of view. But a second way you might encounter this noun is to refer to an acute increase in the severity of a problem, an illness, or some other bad situation. Again, you'll find this in a lot of medical related articles or discussions as well. So, an example of this might be, this treatment can reduce COPD exacerbations. So this is a pulmonary disease, and a particular set of doctors and researchers were looking at something that would reduce those increases in making the particular illness worse. Thanks again to Abdi for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.